Good morning. My name is Tom Cross, and today we're talking about critical concepts in crisis management communications. The slide's kind of busy because it's kind of busy out there these days. You just can't avoid all the crises that exist out there. Here's some contact information. Have any questions or want to pursue any further engagement? Here's a new course we're doing on enterprise sales acceleration. This is for both direct and channel partners. It's a great course we've done for years. We just kind of revamped it, updated it with new ideas. And, it's kind of focused on cloud, UC, IT, collaboration, and these other technologies. So without further ado, here are some of my road rules. My job is to speak, your job to listen. If you get done before me, you're free to go out to play. Or look at another way, you can read 5 times faster than I can speak, and I'm certainly counting on that. Without getting into all the details, here's some of the feedback we've gotten on some of the programs we've built, both in the courses and in the, call it, professional engagement we've done for clients. We think that this is a really important thing these days. It's risen to the top of many CEOs' lists because they're having to face these issues. If you've seen Dennis Muhlenberg from Boeing on TV being chased by reporters down the Capitol Hill, you'll know that this is not an issue that's going to go away very soon. These are the top 10 we're going to go through today. I'm give you the hints. You can get through these 4 phases right now, and then you're done. And if you want to get going, we can, but we'll get through all these topics a little bit in a second. But the first phase is stuff happens. Stuff happens really bad. It happens maybe not to you. We just had a client recently, get terminated for a crazy reason. We have these kind of situations out there that stuff happens on a daily basis, and you can't really do much about it. That's the first part. Phase 1 is, the reaction is, well, what do we do now? We find that most companies, they're not prepared. That's why this course is so vital out there, is because you need to be prepared, because most companies are not. They kind of then wander through this whole process. If you've been following Boeing for the last year, it's like they just have no idea what to do next. There's no strategy in place, and it's kind of like, well, they fired the president of the commercial airlines business. Well, that's not the answer. Dennis needs to go. And so then they kind of get in the next phase, and that's where they are right now. I think that where you see a lot of companies, they get to the next phase, well, maybe it'll just go away, this is just a bubble, we don't, no one's really upset, etc. And then what happens is that they kind of get what's called a subpoena, and you can call that a team field trip, but then you're going to have to end up going to Congress and explaining what happened out there. And you may face, sadly enough, a room full of people with pictures of their loved ones who lost their lives in crashes and things that you have done. It's not going to go away, and it's only going to get worse. It's coming out from different directions, whether it be bribery internally or externally, or with employees or non-governmental employees, and a bunch of others out there. You kind of start with the whole process by listening. You've got to keep track of these issues that are going on out there. Emerging trends, industry outlook, event speaking, competitive insights, and modest social media. Don't take everything, but incorporate everything into your whole process out there. This was announced yesterday. Twitter will no longer accept political ads, and it's kind of like confusing. It's because, well, isn't Twitter already political enough? Okay, they're not going to accept political ads directly, but can't people pay lobbyists to Twitter for them? It's very confusing what Jack Dorsey's strategy for Twitter is. And then you saw Jules happen yesterday, shipped 1 million contaminated pods. Well, that's going to kill the company. Not only is the health department health issues coming after them, but this kind of stuff is just unacceptable, because they'll just end up with lawsuits and on top of one another. And if you haven't thought about this before, we did do another seminar on AI, and we found that there's a majority of AI processes, products, and applications are failing or have failed out there. And if you haven't had a bad enough week already, you can look to Mark Zuckerberg, because it seems to me that he didn't testify before Congress last week. I think it was his robot, because all his responses were so yes, no, no animation, no explanation, just kind of like, just the facts, ma'am. I don't think that really appeals to congressmen. I don't think that's going to help him in the 47 states. They're going to sue him for everything else like that. And I think if you think about this, Facebook's plan for 2020 is too little too late. And I think the whole idea of this whole process is make sure your plan isn't too little too late, because then what happens is that you get other industry leaders coming after you. So whether it be Mark Benioff, and who can't be much bigger than that in the business world, from Salesforce or others, you don't need to have other industry leaders coming after you. The next stage is what we call context. This is really kind of key out there. Build a heat map or spaghetti weather map. You've seen those on the hurricane, tracks of up the coast there. Everybody thinks it's going to go a different direction. If you don't have a heat map, this is something you can start working on today. Make sure that the heat map covers your competitors, your suppliers, other people that may have any impact on your business. We've seen individuals, whether it be like, especially in the case of sports figures, have an impact on, we'll call it, shoe manufacturers and others out there. And so you kind of have to be ready for all these kinds of things that are going to occur out there. Here's a different version of a heat map, so you can kind of make decisions from that, react to that, be prepared for that, etc. This is the one we've used for years. I call it cross net points, where you look at a number of different characteristics, and you kind of put them in a kind of red-green area, and then you kind of build a whole approach to that. So you're kind of looking at not just competitors, you're looking at a lot of different things going on out there, so that you can present to the chief levels and the board members what's going on out there. Here's one we saw from CB Insights. Again, a heat map concentration of big tech's digital health investments. So you can kind of look at that from a different angle. Maybe not you, but certainly industry outlooks. Maybe you could use their heat map to integrate into your heat map. Again, the context is building, understanding political events, governmental technology leveling, and random issues that may have an impact on your business. We like to think of it as that, you've got to be prepared from a lot of different angles out there. I think that in the future, we're going to have all these things that you may think robots are nice, but I think certainly whether it be social media or robots, they're all going to be weaponized to a certain extent out there. Drones especially attack your neighbors for not mowing their lawn. On a positive note, quantum computing is basically going to be more accessible by all out there. Privacy is paramount out there, but it's certainly not possible. And nor is it anybody really kind of concerned about it. So there's people just kind of giving up on the whole process out there. Technology implosions are the fact is that whether it be the BP oil spill, which is this is a picture of, or something else out there, those impacts could have a major impact on your business. Maybe not today, maybe take a while, etc. We've seen Brexit have a long-term impact. People are still trying to figure out what it really means for the companies involved, whether you call trade tariffs or others. Are you really prepared for what's going on there? The new social CEO reports CEOs spending more than 50% of their time articulating to defend themselves on the company and public policy issues. So you see out there is that the CEO, not someone else, not the lobbyist, not the communications director, etc., having to face Congress. Congress doesn't want to see a substitute teacher out there. They want to see the real deal. And so you really have to think that this is going to be more of the role of your business. And before you get subpoenaed, you better have a plan, because if by the time you get the subpoena, it's kind of like having 60 Minutes show up. It's too late. Research, and I think is that this starts with making sure you're analyzing your own customers' internal content messaging, all these kinds of things that you can read here, etc. Gossip, knowledge, communications, etc. are all part of this whole process out there. I think that you could offer a rewards program for internal communications. Make sure that people are feeding you information. The feet on the street of your employees, and whether they're in with customer situations or customer contact or public contact, may have an impact on your business that you're not really ready for. Internally, again, collaboration. Have a crisis content curator on board, ready. Make sure that they're analyzing all these different things and saying, well, the strategy by that company is going to have an impact on our company this way. List links to other thought leaders, not just social media. Treat real people to get their really personal opinions. I like to see that, the feet on the street, the man on the street, how are we doing out there is a really great approach out there. Expand your your scope to special audiences, industry groups. Make sure that you're well involved. You're tracking industry trends out there through the professional media and also professional industrial associations. Expand your networking through thought leadership, influencer communications, engaging with peers, and finding new friends out there. It doesn't hurt to have some new friends when your old ones kind of leave you in dust. I think that we have to look at, again, internally to the crisis culture out there. I don't think that there's really, people think they may call it a toxic culture they work in, et cetera. They may hate their boss, they may hate their job, et cetera. But it doesn't mean that you can't improve upon that to make sure that people feel that they're really involved in what's going on in your company. Realize your management is the most significant cause for crisis communications out there. As one sales organization found, no need for its own crisis intelligence department and which it deemed an affront to its own sales strategy to allow its own strategic decisions to be influenced by what others might or might not be doing. Make sure that the management is keen on this as well, because we find that people hate other departments. Everybody's not really on board with this. And you might find that your real problem, once you go public with your crisis, is that your own people are not behind you. So I'm not saying that they have to be marched down the path of total loyalty, but make sure that they're involved in the process, make sure that they have the means to communicate the crisis and their concerns to management, because this way you start to build trust. And the trust process is just continuous. It never goes away. It's always changing. I think that you have to understand that part of this thing is the demographics that are changing out there. The people, employees, customers, et cetera, are changing without your knowledge. You really cannot keep up with what's going on. There's all these different trends that emerge and converge out there. You cannot predict competitive hack attacks either in M&A, advances in tech, or anything else, nor react to them. You can only direct your customers to your content and thought leadership. And if you're not in contact with your customers on a daily basis, if necessary, depending on the crisis that exists out there, they're going to drift away. They're going to run like away from the fire because they see that what they made the decision to use your products is going to cost them their job. Channels is how you look at all the different channels that exist out there. I've mentioned this before, but integrate channel communications, channel media communications, social media, all this kind of things into your heat map, et cetera, whether you call it an AI system or what. But make sure that I think that we've built one for an app like this, which is an internal news feed, and it really works. Many people think this is really easy to do, but what we find out there is that it's really not easy to do. It's really hard. You really have to think is that, look at both traditional and social media outlets before you influence, before this crisis, because you cannot influence anyone afterwards. Once the house is on fire, they're going to want to know who started the fire, not what the fire is all about. It's really amazing. I've seen so many management teams, they're chasing down the person, before the fire is even out. They don't really care. They're tracking that person down. It's so awesomely crazy out there. Internally, make sure that you have an internal communications flow. I've mentioned this before, but make sure that it's really kind of, built into the process. Make sure that in new hire training, continuous training, updating. Hey, we want to hear from you about your culture, your crises, whatever. No man left, no woman left behind here. But make sure that you see something, you say something. And I think that really helps build trust in the organization, that you really want to hear from them. I like to think of that if you feel social media, be on social media, but remember, you could be the target faster than you can read these words. If you cannot respond in 5 minutes, 7 by 24, then delete all your accounts. I am a big believer in some forms of social media, such as LinkedIn and others, but I do think that you have to manage that process because the crisis is beyond social media. It's not just a social media thing. Yeah, you're going to find people reacting to you on social media, which is hence why I think you really kind of like step back from it a second and build your own. Build your own social media system. It's not hard to do. The platforms are out there, whether it be a smartphone app or just straight separate website. In our other aspects, we kind of talk about a crisis-ready website. Make sure that's up and ready too, so that again, It's not live, it's not public, etc. But when you have the crisis, you need to have something that's ready to push out, because if you use traditional social media, it's going to push it out in the wrong direction. You need to be able to push it out yourself through traditional and new forms of media that exist out there. I like to think is that, make sure that you've got your influencers on board with this. Make sure that they're complying with all the FTC rules, but also they can be really helpful in saying, hey, I really still like this company. They did me a good favor back then, etc. And make sure your customers are on board with this thing as well, because you want them as fans too when the stuff hits the fan. I think the other thing is that within your own 724 Ultra emergency management team, so you've got a team of people out there, whether you're attacking social media, traditional media, the press, the public, the chambers of commerce, etc. You make sure that they're all involved in this whole process. So when you hit the button, it's ready to go out there. I think the idea of having your own social media platform really helps you do that, because you're not waiting around for someone else to push out the media. You're doing it yourself. This is something we've built for people before. It's really a great idea. Build your own crisis-ready website, not public till the event. You can have a lot of content there. Some of it may involve a specific crisis, but some of it may involve what are you doing in a public policy framework to impact and mitigate the impact of this crisis. Tell your own story, tell your history, etc. Make sure that, again, you're addressing every concern out there. Make sure that there's a way for anyone to engage and you respond to there. But again, you are controlling the whole crisis rather than having to be, whipsawed and responding to the crisis out there. Compliance is just one piece of the process. I think if you're doing compliance right now, we've seen this is an extension of that, but certainly different than that. There are players in this crisis management lifecycle management process. Call them authors, actualizers, auditors, and analyzers. Because if you're not really ready for this, you need to have some sort of process, because some of it's an organization, some of it you want to do. It really is like going into a restaurant. You have a range of options. As long as you're doing something, you're not doing nothing. Because again, you can't expect people to appreciate you when you do nothing. So make sure that all the senior level management are involved in the process and content. What happens if one of them got, if you had a death of senior management, how would that impact your business? Certainly on that personal level, but on the other hand, if one of your C-levels has been caught in some sort of corrupt activities, make sure there's a process for that. If you've got the actualizers out there, those people using the data out there, if they see bad data, they see the data being used in the wrong way, well, that could be a security issue internally, but it's also a public policy issue if it's exposed. If they're exposing data, which we've seen in whether it be government whistleblower situations, private enterprise, make sure you're involved in that process. And then the last two really are auditors and analyzers. Auditors really just kind of do a first level check of the content, make sure it's all kind of, whether it be compliant, regulatory, or whatever, but at the same time is that they are checking the policies, make sure that it's crisis ready. They're looking at it from that framework. Yeah, we appreciate the content. This is a sales brochure. What does that have to do with crisis? Well, what happens if the product fails? We have a crisis then, so we need to have some sort of crisis response to that content. And then analyzers are the last thing, what I call them audit the auditors. Because, again, you want to do a double check on this, because when you're in the middle of crisis, you can't be going, well, we thought that was right. People aren't really, really going to respond to that process. They're going to really respond to other things out there. Number 9 is synchronicity. This is what I call the random effect out there. It's just random information that can impact your business. If you see every day someone slamming someone else on social media, let's just hope that you're not in that target range out there, because it could happen, and you have to be prepared for random things that occur out there on a random basis that you have really no control over. I think it's like, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you will do things differently. Famous Warren Buffett quote. So this kind of sets the stage for all this other things that are going out there. This is not a drill. You've got to be prepared. It's not like, hey, we're going to go out and be fit. Fitness doesn't start the first day. It starts every day. So you start looking at a major crisis out there. Are you really ready to? That's the interesting thing is that when they talk to people on the street out there, would you fly on the 737 MAX? I don't know if the overall answers, but if it's more than one, or one saying no, then that's one too many to say no to fly on that plane, because a number of the major airlines are faced with crises that exist out there as a result of that. The question will still be is that it was supposed to be in November, tomorrow, then it got pushed out to February, now it's March, and the latest is, as of yesterday, who knows? It could be even later than that. And so if you're a view of the passengers and Boeing's part suppliers and Brexiteers as a separate issue, this is not going to help you have a nice day. For example, this is a specific example that came out yesterday. GE is expected to lose $1.4 billion this year from Boeing 737 MAX grounding because they make the engines for the 737 MAX. So if you're a major supplier, look at this impact. If you're a minor supplier, who knows? When you look across the board out there, they're talking about billions and billions because the airlines have lost business. They just can't replace the planes. They can't change their fleet all the way around, et cetera, especially if you're Southwest who only flies the 737 MAX. Today, dozens of Boeing 737 NG planes are grounded after discovering cracks on the aircraft. Well, hello. This means that every Boeing plane is going to go through rigorous scrutiny before it's put back in the air or let to fly again. It just goes on and on and on. And basically, any kind of crisis will kill your bottom line. It could turn you from profitability to loss. The impact on your business is going to be long-term because, think about it, Boeing's never going to recover from this situation. 50 years from now, people, well, the 737 MAX, what a mess that was. Look how badly they handled that. You look at many of the retail chains, food chains, et cetera, that have had food, cyber security crisis exists out there, and it's not going to go away. And it just lingers on because these companies have never dealt with this in a real positive manner out there. So I think you need to kind of move beyond to start getting your crisis content ready. Make sure that your content, all your content can have a crisis escape clause out there. Because what happens out there, people are going to manipulate your content, and whether you call that information, disinformation, deep fakes out there in all kinds of different ways. So you can't respond to that quickly enough. The next steps are, no one kind of assessment is possible. I mean, in other words, there's no one kind of assessment. Each one is unique. You need to look at your own crisis management team out there. What do you want to do? How's this going to be organized, et cetera? Are we going to have an app for that? The crisis ready website is ready. How do we build all these into a system out there that is a continuous updating process, whether our heat maps or whatever? These are just some examples of tools out there you can use, build, design, develop, deliver. But keep in mind, this is an ongoing crisis. I think that what happens out there is people give lip service to it, and they go, well, we haven't had a crisis here. I guess we're not going to budget for that again. Well, not knowing that, a crisis from a supplier or upscale from like a, supplier or downline supplier could have a major impact on your business. So, keep iterating, keep doing it, keep reporting your findings, make sure you're involved with the process. Are you really ready for the weather storm out there? We've seen weather crises that hit and have had a major impact on whether it be, major, geographical areas or individuals out there. And I don't think anybody's ever really ready, but at the saying that is that why not at least try? Here's some background on what we do out here: thought leadership, executive seminars, professional development, and other areas, references, et cetera. And we appreciate you taking a look at this. These are available in the handouts. And we also do other types of executive webinars, et cetera, like I mentioned, the sales acceleration one, which is really kind of a fun thing. Everybody thinks about sales training. Everybody thinks there's lots of sales training out there. Well, yeah, there's lots of sales training, but we need a lot more of it out there, frankly. We think that sales training is not something you go away. You have different versions of it. The other thing we've done out there is these what we call market validations for artificial intelligence, whether it be market, business validations, product validations, etc. As a result of more than 50% of the AI failures that exist out there. This is also covered in another webinar. You're welcome to look it up on Bright Talk. A little bit about me. This book I wrote on AI and other tools is well received and well reviewed. We do other things on strategic customer assessments and digital meetings. Lots of interesting, exciting things out there. I want to thank you for spending time with me today, and I wish you well. And my biggest view out there is, get your umbrella ready and get everything out ready as well, because it's going to occur faster and have more devastating impact than you ever imagine. All the best. Have a great day. Cheers.